Hello everybody and welcome back to another reading vlog. So today I am starting a series that I've done a couple of times on my channel, which is reading the finalists, not the shortlist, the finalists for the National Book Award for Fiction. This is always released around October. And then the award ceremony is usually in November. So it gives you about a month to read 5 books, which I find to be a challenge, but not like that's the only thing I'm reading or that I'm struggling to get through the books. And recently, the finalists were just released, and so I figured it's time to get this challenge started again for now the 3rd time. I will link my other videos where I've done this challenge before, and just a little bit of housekeeping for how I'm planning to do the series this year. So I'm going to be doing 3 separate vlogs. The first vlog, I'm going to be reading 2 books, which is today. And then the second vlog, I will be reading 2 books. And my final vlog will be 1 book and also talking overall about my thoughts, who I think is going to win, and who I want to win the prize. The winner will be announced November 12th, and I think it's being hosted by Jacqueline Woodson, which is very exciting. And I always do watch that live because I find that a fun little treat at the end of this challenge. Before we get into my reading plans for today, I wanted to just briefly talk about some of my thoughts about the finalists, which I have here, minus James. James, unfortunately, is in the post office ether. It was supposed to be delivered last week, so hopefully it will actually get delivered. But the finalist titles were James by Percival Everett, All Fours by Miranda July, My Friends by Hisham Attar, Ghostroots by Pemi Aguda, and Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. So overall, I was very, very happy with the list. I've been wanting to read Martyr, My Friends, All Fours, and James before the list was even announced. I hadn't actually heard about Ghostroots, but I was very excited to see that it was a story collection, which we don't always get on the finalist lists. I think James seems like it is probably the favorite to win the prize, as it has been nominated for so many prizes this year and so highly loved around the book community. But I've also heard exceptional things about many of these books, and so really, I think anything could win. So for this first vlog, I'm going to be reading Martyr and Ghostroots. The second vlog is going to be My Friends and All Fours. And then hopefully James gets delivered. I will do that as a solo vlog, my 3rd vlog in this series. So briefly just chatting what these 2 books are about that I'm going to be reading in this vlog. For Martyr, the inside flap says Cyrus Shams, the novel's hero, is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss, a mother whose plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless accident, and a father whose life in America was circumscribed by killing chickens and on a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him into the mysteries of his past. And it goes on. That sounds really interesting. I love the concept and the theme of inheritance of things other than like your genes, things that are passed down through many centuries, like multi-generational trauma. So I don't know if that's where this is headed, but I'm really interested by that initial synopsis. And then for Ghostroots, I really, really love this cover. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. This is kind of a slight book, but it is a collection of short stories, which I believe are connected. So it says, in this beguiling collection of 12 imaginative stories set in Lagos, Nigeria, Pemi Aguda dramatizes the tensions between our yearning to be individuals and the ways we are haunted by what came before. Interesting. All right, so I don't know if there's going to be connections between these stories or if they're all going to kind of have their own separate plots, but I'm very, again, excited for a short story collection. I unfortunately haven't got to read any short story collections this year. So I actually have some very exciting plans today because I'm about to go to the airport to fly to St. Louis to visit one of my very best friends. We did residency together and she is now in fellowship, and so she's in a different city than me, but we happen to have this weekend off together, so we're going to just enjoy St. Louis, enjoy each other's company, maybe watch some Love is Blind, which I think was just released, and so I have to go get my stuff ready to travel there. Also, night flying. I feel like I'm always a morning flight person, so this will be something a little different for me. I think I'm going to bring Ghostroots on the plane since it's a little bit smaller, easier to carry, and maybe I'll get through a few of the stories. And very excited to get some initial impressions. So I am back from my trip, which was super lovely. I really enjoyed getting to spend time with my friend and getting to see a new city. And I only did buy one book on the trip. It's RBG's book. I'll put the cover up here. And I have not read it yet, but I do want to read it before the American election, which is coming up in November, so hopefully this month. But I saw it in a very cute bookstore that we went to that had a cat that lived there, and I knew that I had to have it. Some of my other favorite memories from the trip were going to the zoo and getting to see all of the adorable animals. And we also got to go up to the top of the St. Louis Arch, which was beautiful. I put in a few clips from that day. And overall, it was just a very refreshing weekend away, which can help you change your perspective and help you come back to your regular day-to-day with some more energy and life to it. So that was very lovely. I did also get to read a little bit of Ghostroots, mainly on the plane going there and coming back. And I am currently just about to start the story, The Wonders of the World. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through this book. I am really, really, really loving it so far. I think it's hard to talk about a short story collection because obviously there's no, contiguous plot between the stories. But I did want to talk about some of the themes that I think are most interesting in here to me and that I think are really well done. I think the title of this book actually gets at a couple of the themes really well. Ghostroots. A lot of the stories in this collection are related to family, our ancestors, our culture, who shapes who we are in the world. There are a few stories that have some kind of plant imagery, which I thought was very interesting. But a lot of them are just about, talking about your mother, your father, the people in your family that have stories that have been passed down through the years. But then the ghost part to it is very interesting. So what we bring to the world and what we inherit from the people around us is more than just, your mom has blue eyes, so I have blue eyes, that type of thing. It's more, I think what it gets to a little bit more is those traits, what our ancestors went through, in some way haunt us throughout our life. And there's a lot of kind of speculative, not horror, but I would say spookiness through some of these stories. The first story in this collection is an absolute banger. It's called Manifest. It starts with a woman looking in the mirror and finding a pimple for the first time on her face, and kind of I see this as representing coming of age, her coming to see, who she is. And then around the same time, maybe the same day, her mother starts calling her the name of her mother's mother. So the character's grandmother. And this character's grandmother happens to be, or was, a very evil woman who did a lot of things that were unspeakable in the family. She's kind of like that ghost from the past. And so it's about how her grandmother's spirit starts to haunt her. But I think it's really interesting that it's put on the same day as the fact that she's getting her first pimple, showing us that often what brings us to find ourselves is reckoning with our past, with the people in our past. So I really, really love that story. That was the very first story of the book. That was a absolute banger. We are moving a little bit more towards like an evolution, I see, of this story, where some of the more recent stories that I've read are more about individualism and where, family roots and our upbringing, how that translates into us becoming our own selves. So I just read a story called Girly that did a really beautiful kind of description of somebody who essentially was made to work as a maid by her family and just put to work doing things that she didn't really want to do, and kind of her finding herself through that, which I really enjoyed that one as well. So I have a couple stories left. So far, this has been a absolute treat. I did watch Pemi Aguda's interview. She has one on YouTube, and it was just so interesting hearing her talk about the book and the fact that she wrote these stories over 8 years, which is amazing. She's seen herself evolve so much, and you really see that evolution in the short stories themselves. So planning to finish this up today, and then hopefully start Martyr today as well. So Tyler and I just got back from our annual trip to the apple orchard, which we do every year, usually like September or October time. This year we did it kind of mid-October because it's been so warm that it didn't feel fall-y enough for us to go. But we actually had the day off today, so it was lovely to put some fall clothes on and just enjoy the apple orchard. We always pick way too many apples. This year, 18 pounds of apples. So one of our crispers is just completely full. And I am planning to go to the shop and get some stuff to make an apple crisp tonight, which is, I think, the first fall baking that I've done this year. So I'm very, very pumped for that. But I did finish Ghostroots this morning, so I wanted to chat about some of my overall thoughts about the book. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I think I'm going to give it a 4 stars, which feels harsh because while I was reading it, I loved the writing. I loved the stories. They felt so resonant and real. But for some reason, and I don't know if this is because it's a short story collection and I don't read a lot of short story collections, the characters didn't quite sit on my heart as much as they do in like a novel length book. And again, I kind of feel like that is probably just a testament to, with a novel, you sit with a character for many, many pages, whereas a short story is, of course, a different format. And I do think some of these characters, if they were made into a full length novel, I probably would have given that novel 5 stars. However, enough rambling. I really did enjoy this. My favorite stories overall were Manifest, which I talked to you guys a little bit about in the previous clip. I really liked Breast Milk, and the final story of the collection, which was called Masquerade Season. But really a fantastic debut short story collection. So this morning, after I finished Ghostroots, I decided to start Martyr, currently on page 45-ish, and I already know that this book is going to be a 5-star read and one of my favorite books of all time, which seems like kind of a bold statement, but the characters and the writing are already drawing me in a way that very few books are able to do in the first few pages. I wanted to read just the first paragraph for you because that was the thing that really, really drew me in. And I think, some books do this well, some books do it less well, but this is one of the best beginnings to a book that I can think of in recent memory. So it says, maybe it was that Cyrus had done the wrong drugs in the right order or the right drugs in the wrong order. But when God finally spoke back to him after 27 years of silence, what Cyrus wanted more than anything else was a do-over, clarification. Lying on his mattress that smelled like piss and Febreze, in his bedroom that smelled like piss and Febreze, Cyrus stared up at the room's single light bulb, willing it to blink again, willing God to confirm that the bulb's flicker had been a divine action and not just the old apartment's trashy wiring. Like, what a beginning to a book. There was also a scene in this book, and I will not be giving any spoilers, but just kind of general things that I have enjoyed so far. So Cyrus is a character who is struggling a lot with addiction, and you follow him very briefly at the beginning as he's still in the throes of that, and then as he's sober, you start kind of following more closely his story. And one of the first jobs that he has as he's sober is being a standardized patient, which are basically people that pretend to have a certain disease so that doctors in training can learn how to diagnose and treat that specific disease, which is something that I remember fondly and not always so fondly of medical school. It's a very stressful experience because it's one of your first interactions with a patient, even though they're just acting to have a problem that they don't really have. But he's having this standardized patient interaction with this very nervous med student. And all of a sudden, he just starts like going on a rant about the point of life and addiction. And it just made me laugh because I do remember situations like that. And I also thought it was such a great moment to have kind of a poignant rant about something. But yes, I am planning to read a bunch more of this tonight, as the first part of it has certainly gripped me, hopefully with a bowl of apple crisp and maybe a window open for some fall breeze. So it should be a lovely fall evening. So I was headed back from the gym today, and as I was coming into the home, I saw our flag in front of our home, just like strewn across the grass. Our flag is a Guardians flag. We're big Guardians baseball fans, and they have reached the championship series. And I was like, this seems like a bad premonition. So Tyler, and it wasn't just that the flag fell out of the flagpole, it was that the whole apparatus got ripped out. So Tyler and I got our drill to drill it back into the front of the home. It is up and flying, and the first game of the championship series is about to start. So fingers crossed that that wasn't some type of bad omen. But I actually did finish Martyr over the past couple of days, and I realized I probably shouldn't say that a book is going to be one of my favorite books of all time when I'm on chapter 2, because while there were a lot of things that I loved, loved, loved about this book, there were also some things that I had some issues with. And so it's probably not going to be one of my favorite books and maybe not even a 5-star. So my favorite thing about this book was the complexity in the discussion about suicide versus being a martyr. Not versus, suicidality and martyrdom. Our main character, Cyrus, is really struggling with finding purpose in his life after his mother died in a plane accident and his home life with his father kind of fell apart. Um, he goes off to college, suffers from addiction, and starts to lose a driving force, starts to lose his will or purpose to live. Um, he eventually becomes sober, but still doesn't feel this sense that he has purpose in the world. But one thing that he really loves is writing. And he comes up with this idea to make a project about martyrs, people that died for a reason. He thinks if I am not living for a reason, maybe I'll learn about people that died for a specific reason, and maybe I will become one of those people, which is an interesting kind of paradox in itself. This book goes on a journey through exploring many of his family members who lived in Iran. Those chapters are kind of flashbacked and sprinkled into Cyrus's main storyline. This book is very meandering and philosophical in a wonderful way. Like, there are so many parts of this book where the writing just hits you and you have to read a passage multiple times. Really interesting passages about the meaning of life, finding life after addiction, hard hitting, beautiful, beautiful writing. And the beginning of this book felt like that writing was coupled with a structured narrative that I thought was maybe going to progress a certain way. One where we were following Cyrus very closely. And then towards the end of this book, the structure felt a little more loosey-goosey. We started to follow his family members slightly more. And we also looked into Cyrus's dreams, where he dreams about many different prominent people, such as Donald Trump and Lisa Simpson and many others. And it became a little bit more experimental. There certainly was a plot and something that we were moving towards, but I'm not sure that all of those asides helped the narrative structure and the drive of this story, even though there were really beautiful parts of writing sprinkled into them. Lots of people, when they review this book, talk about a twist that is very improbable and a little bit ridiculous. And I also thought that about the twist. It seems like, oh no, the author's not going to do that. And then they do. On the other hand, though, I don't know that this book is supposed to be like the most literal, thought out book. I don't know. That's the excuse that I'm trying to give it for the plot twist that I can't quite forgive. And another thing that I struggled with a bit was the end of this book was extremely open-ended. So you really could take it to mean a lot of different things. And I like that in some sense. And I think it worked well with this book given its kind of loose form. But I wish so much I knew what happened to these characters because I felt so deeply for Cyrus that I'm just curious what the author meant for the ending. I do think that this was a very successful debut. I did really enjoy it, but I do think there are a few things that made it not as great as maybe it could have been. I think I ultimately am going to give this a 4 stars as well. I did really, really enjoy it, but it had moments that were 5 plus and also moments that were a little eye rolling for me. So still trying to piece together my thoughts of this. Perhaps I will do a dedicated review for this book because I think it has a lot of interesting conversation points and I do have a lot of thoughts about it. So I think that that could be a video in the future, perhaps. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this first installment in my experience reading the National Book Award finalists for fiction. I'd love to know if you read either of these books, what you thought about them, what you rated them. Did you get frustrated by the martyr plot twist? Did you also feel conflicted, similar to me? Or did the beautiful prose win you over? What was your favorite story in Ghostroots? I would absolutely love to know. And Tyler and I just ordered some pizza for the game, so we're going to go enjoy. And I hope you guys have a very wonderful rest of your day and your week. Bye.